These paintings are informed by so much of the experiences that I've had. Working within a community context and being an artist in the art world too. For me, there was always a tension between the two.
Of all the artists we're going to meet on this trip across America, Rick Lowe may perhaps be the most experienced of all in the unique game that art and community can play together.
Wait, is that, yeah, 25, 35, 10.
Yep. It's your turn, Rick. What you gonna do?
My mentor, Jesse Lott, and I would like to laugh about calling dominoes inconsequential. It's just a game, you know, it's just something you do to play, right? But there's so many other things that are going on. You know, it's psychological, it's spiritual. I mean, there are just so many things that you reveal about yourself and that you learn about others. It was very much so one of the things that was influential in my transitioning back into painting after 30 years of doing community work and social sculpture projects.
To understand Rick's journey, we need to understand his home, Houston's 3rd Ward. In the mid-'80s, when Rick moved to Houston to become an artist, the historically black 3rd Ward neighborhood was undergoing a massive transformation after decades of disinvestment. A once thriving neighborhood filled with Victorian-era houses and home to a growing middle-class black community, the neighborhood began emptying as the U.S. population shifted en masse away from urban areas, leaving the 3rd Ward community abandoned and vulnerable. And soon, the city of Houston turned to demolishing empty houses as a solution.
In my neighborhood, it looks like a bomb had been dropped down in there. The house that I was born in, torn down. All the old landmarks are torn down.
In my late 20s, I realized that I had this duality. On the one hand, I'm an activist. It's just it's my nature. But on the other hand, you know, I'm an artist. So, you know, early on, when I started making political paintings, I had created a piece around police brutality. I thought it was very impactful. But a friend of mine brought their class to my studio, and it was a critical moment for me because there was a young person that said, you know, while the painting reflected what was going on in the community didn't need that because they already knew what was happening. He said, if you're creative, why can't you create a solution?
Well, there's an effort underway to help save and revitalize a part of the historic 3rd Ward. It's a campaign being pushed by an unlikely group, artists.
Okay, yeah, this wall here.
Volunteers are renovating the houses.
I decided that I needed to do something that had a more direct impact, which then led to the founding of Project Row Houses.
Welcome to Project Row Houses. We were founded in 1993. Our story starts at the row houses right here, built in the 1930s, but by the 90s, they had been abandoned, and the city of Houston was offering anyone $5,000 to tear them down and take the debris away.
People were just fleeing from the 3rd Ward because of the destruction that had happened throughout the 80s. The war on drugs. It was considered dangerous and violent and so on and so forth. The community decided that they wanted the city and the county to take a tour with them to look at the dangerous places. And I asked if I could go on the tour. They stopped the bus at the corner of where Project Row Houses sit right now. And they said, this is the worst place in the entire neighborhood. But I saw those houses and I saw something else. And it must have been the way the lighting was hitting the rust-colored roofs were just beautiful. And immediately I started thinking of John Bigger's paintings. Even in their dilapidated state, there was something about the rhythm of the architecture that just kind of was very beautiful. And that's what you see in John Bigger's paintings of shotgun houses.
In high school, I was here pretty much every weekend and any given afternoon. Everybody was back here making things, and painting and drawing and learning. All of these techniques that you wouldn't learn in an academy, a school, or a college. And it felt like a living painting. It felt like a living artwork. And everybody that was here felt like a person in it.
Art is life, life is art. It's not separate. You know, you don't go to it, you're in it.
I was in the painting. It took me a long time to be able to say this, but yeah, I'm an artist. And if there was a moment in which that shift happened, that happened here. I felt special, but I know that this is something that Rick and Jesse and those guys would have done for anybody around here.
Toward the late 90s, Project Row Houses was moving along and trying to figure out the relationship between arts, education, social services, housing, and seeing intuitively that there was a connection, that they're interconnected.
Rick Lowe's work was to change the ideal of art as an object, but art as a process. Art is an object, but it also is a process. I was one of the first of 5 young mothers that was chosen to be part of the Young Mothers Residential Program that really combines this ideal of social services and art and creativity. Seeing how art can build and revitalize a neighborhood. So art created housing for young mothers. Art created a market, a laundromat. Art did that.
Project Row Houses became one of the country's most iconic works of social art, changing life for residents of the Third Ward and attracting artists from all corners of the country. Rick began receiving recognition from prestigious institutions, becoming a figure of reference in socially engaged art, and going on to create projects throughout the country and the world. But almost 3 decades after giving up painting to focus on his work in communities, Rick was missing something.
You know, I had no idea that this thing would be something that would go on and on and on. I spent 30 years at Project Row Houses, and I had stopped painting at that time. So I'm trying to find myself in, you know, another form of creative practice.
At one point, there was this painting class being taught here. It was really interesting because Rick was always there doing the class himself. But this was like one of the first times where I saw Rick's art. And I was like, whoa, Rick's painting. It was fascinating to see that he had this other grand focus.
When I think of my career, you know, over time, I found that one of the sacrifices that I had made was my own mental space and desire for aesthetic things. I get a certain kind of joy, you know, of just being able to play around with these paintings and play around with them in a way that does reflect my sensibility of doing community work. Painting relative to working with community is kind of like go with the flow of where the energy is. Got to figure out what the canvas is trying to tell me. That's the process that I employ in both community engaged art as well as painting. Is just try to be mindful and listen to what people are really interested in and what's going to be the most meaningful and impactful for them.
Let's walk through and we'll go down to the...
In the late 90s, the community started to realize that we were in the context of what was probably going to be a gentrification situation.
We're in the process of strategizing and figuring out how to set up some barriers for big developers so they don't come in and just take it over.
The thing that I started to realize at that time was that to know where the investments are coming, you have to study maps.
So when I first started Project Row Houses, our intention was to just do our little programming on this little block here. But listening to folks in the community, they were talking about the need for housing. So we just started to think about, let's see if we can get more housing. We built the first single family house, and then 4 duplexes with 8 units was acquired. And then 16 units there, a couple of single family houses here, commercial building here, then the El Dorado Ballroom. And then over here was a preservation project of this entire block. But, you know, there was much more capital waiting to move into this area than we had, you know, power of community to resist.
After 30 years leading Project Row Houses, Rick has passed the baton to other members of the Third Ward community.
Because of Project Row Houses, I was able to graduate from the University of Houston. I was able to secure a full fellowship to pursue my master's and PhD at Penn State. And I came back to Houston to do the work of preserving a community that has defined who I am. I specifically focus on the strategies that allow residents to hold on to the assets of the community.
A lot of things have changed, and we're basically getting pushed out. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's what the reality of it is. We're having less power, less say.
We need to be able to protect the residents who have been here historically, who deserve to benefit the most. Every townhouse you see, there used to be a shotgun house, right? The vacant lot is vacant because the houses were demolished. People lived all these places where these townhouses are, and the threats are always coming. This is not a new story, right? But the question is, will it be a new ending? Will Third Ward successfully prevent the permanent displacement of its residents and the displacement and erasure of its history and culture?
After all these years, Rick continues to call the Third Ward his home. He still spends time at Project Row Houses, and he still plays the game. Because it was the game that showed him the way back to where it all began.
You can play on that. We friends. I ain't gonna take it personal. Even though it's starting to feel personal.
Next year you can.
One of the things that happened with me in the process of playing dominoes is I see the patterns of the dominoes as they were played out on the table. And I was interested in that, but it didn't have any real meaning to me until one day my mentor, Jesse, looked at me and he said, just do something. I was like, okay. So I traced the game and we played another one and I traced it again. And as I traced them more and more and more, it was very interesting that they began to look like maps. And these maps are very interesting, the color coding of them and all that. I was very attracted to that. I was interested in the idea of abstract mapping and the connection between mapping the known and the unknown. I think my younger self would have put me on the sellout list, like completely, you know, right off the bat, because I spent so much time thinking of art from the standpoint of what it can do and downplaying the beauty of it. It's taken me a little time to kind of see that there are multiple ways to play and multiple ways to contribute.
Everybody wants to talk about impact and, want to see the impact. I mean, what's the impact of a painting? I don't know. Very much like the community engaged work, the most important thing, regardless of the impact, is just to do it. You show up and you do it. It's that notion of being invested in the process of life, of just getting up and trying to do it as well as you can. And you never know when it's going to impact somebody. We just got to put it out there.